this episode, I'm going to be making some bookcases for our living room because my wife has a small library worth of books. So we get started by breaking down some sheets of red oak plywood. The reason we chose red oak is we're going for a little more of a classic look than a painted bookshelf that we had in our previous home. The first step for making these bookcases was ripping down the sides and the shelves. The dimensions of the shelves are going to be 9 inches deep. Went with 9 inches because I didn't want the bookcases to stick out too far past our fireplace, but obviously also needed the shelves to be deep enough in order to hold all the books. Anytime I build a project using plywood, the beginning is always a little interesting because it's just me, myself, and I trying to manhandle this 4x8 sheet of plywood and get it ripped down to size, but with the added benefits of my workbench here and then the second one that I built later on, it helps with some good outfeed so that I can handle this a little easier. After cutting the side panels to the width that I needed, the second step was cutting a groove in the back to hold a 1/4 inch back panel. That's going to help kind of square everything up when I go for the final glue up. So I do one pass and then I scoot the fence over, test it, and do a second pass just to make sure that everything fits snug. Once I like how far the fences move, I just lock it down and send everything back through for one more cut. With the sides taken care of, now it's time to get the plywood ripped down for the shelves themselves. I decided the easiest way to go about this was to get my track saw out and rip these pieces in half and make them a little easier to cut all the shelves out of. This wasn't a super complicated cut list, but I just use a free program called Cut List Optimizer and put in all the measurements from my SketchUp file, and it tells me where all the cuts need to be made and how long and everything, so it takes a lot of the thinking out of the process and I can just put the saw down and get to cutting. I probably need to invest in a steps tool so I don't have to end up on my tippy toes. I'm still in process of trying to get all the dust collection set up best, but I figured it'd be a wise idea to put my dust mask on here because my shop vac hose is not long enough to reach to the outlet for my saw. Getting those pieces cut down with the track saw, I just take out my traditional folding ruler because I found that it's a little more accurate than the tape measure that's on my fence of my saw. So get everything locked down and just start ripping. There was in each bookcase there are I think 7 shelves themselves and then 8 total pieces that make up the horizontal parts. So it's just a very repetitive process here. The only tricky part of getting the shelves cut down was the width of the bookcases was about an inch different. So the left-hand side of our fireplace was about an inch shorter than our right-hand side, so I just had to make sure to keep those pieces separated. In order to get a better idea of what color we wanted, I took a scrap piece of the oak plywood and just did a couple stain samples, and later you'll see just put it on our mantle so we could see what the colors look like in the different light as time passed during the day. Watching this back, it feels a little bit unnecessary to do as many samples as I did, but I figured I'd rather play it safe than sorry, and we end up with a color that we didn't like. In a second, you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about in the space with the help of my trusty fork pointer.
The grand scheme is going to be a bookshelf basically from floor to ceiling on either side, and these are the stain colors that we were trying to decide between. I think we're going to go with that one, and I'm going to try and sand the beam down. We're not as huge of a fan of the super rough solid look, and also it's just a little darker than we would like, so staining the bookshelves and the mantle the same color so that everything looks uniform.
The fourth step was going through on the side panels and marking out where I needed to put all the dados for the shelves. This took a little bit of math just because we wanted the shelves to be evenly spaced, but after spending a decent amount of time on SketchUp, was able to get everything mapped out, and then I can just kind of copy and paste those numbers in real life. Once I was done marking everything, I just put a straight edge down on my lines, and I bought an undersized plywood bit for my router by Whiteside and just clamped the sides of each bookcase together so I could just go through and make one dado pass at a time instead of having to try and be extra precise by doing each one individually. I feel like there had to be a better system for getting this straight edge set up, but I just couldn't figure it out for the life of me, and so I just went with the mentally simpler method of clamping down a straight edge and just measuring a few times before actually making the cut. I knew when it came time to actually glue these up, because of the size, it was going to be pretty large undertaking, so I wanted to do a dry fit, but you can see the sides were a little bowed. But I hope you guys enjoy this process that you're about to witness of me really struggling through this. But this is why I did a dry fit, because I was just trying to figure out what was going to be the most effective way to bring everything together. We practice. Watching this back, it feels a little unnecessary bringing out all these clamps to try and do this dry fit, but I just wanted to be extra sure that everything would seat together pretty well. This is the first look at kind of what they were going to look like, and I didn't realize how tall they were actually going to be until I set this up. But this was a nightmare to get taken down just because nothing was really secure. We fast forward a little bit just because I couldn't find an interesting way to video me staining, so I skipped to putting finish on. I chose to put shellac on just because I felt like I was making some old school bookcases. I thought shellac felt more old school than putting anything else on, and it dries super fast, so I was able to put quite a few coats on and build them up, and I think it was a pretty good idea. I just like how they feel, and I like how it kind of makes them look a little older than if I would have done something different. Took the notes that I had from the dry fit and tried to apply them here. The thing that saved me was these two large scraps of plywood. It allowed me to fully extend my clamps, which gave me all the working space that I really needed in order to make this go smoothly. The only real difficult part of this glue up was trying to get this dang bottle open because the glue had dried to the cap. this glue up was pretty similar to the beginning of this project, just repetitive process of getting all the shelves cut out. It was the same thing with gluing it up. It's just kind of tapping each shelf into place. That undersized plywood bit really did a great job, and it made this nice and snug. So I was able to just put some glue on the edge of the shelves and tap them home into the dados, and I didn't need to use any sort of nails or screws. It made me feel like a real woodworker.
I'd say that went better than planned. I've been thinking through how to glue this up for a few days now, and having these extra pieces of plywood to make a longer base is very effective, and I have just enough bar clamps. Now we just let this sit overnight, and I'll be able to take this out of clamps, and I can flip it over, because for right now you can kind of see the back isn't attached, but I'll just strike some lines on the back, and I can take my brad nailer and nail it together. But it came out, the edges of the plywood were pretty wavy, and so kind of with your eye you can look down, it's pretty straight. Same for this side, but overall I'm super happy with this.
Again, it might be a little over the top, but when I took a step back and looked at all those clamps, it just was such a pretty sight. One of the last things I needed to do before I could actually install was just get the back panel screwed into all the shelves, just to make everything even more secure. And then I also added some nailers, some 3/4 inch nailers on the backside so that I could screw through the panel, through the nailer, into studs to securely attach these bookcases to the wall. Here's the first look with the bookcases in place. Just had some minor details to wrap up. The last details I needed to wrap up were ripping this board of red oak into 1/4 inch strips to make the edge banding. This edge banding needed to get a round over, stained, and finish put on it. And I also needed to stain the baseboard and the crown molding and also put finish on that. Quick look with that edge banding just put on.
Okay, got the bookshelves wrapped up. It was finished over various nights and days off. Since it's for my own house, I can't just work on it all day. But here's the final look at it. So we've got the left-hand shelf. My wife wanted it to be color coordinated, so she has organized the books. She's got a better eye for things, so I just build it, and she has the vision. But it turned out pretty sweet. The fireplace was a little bit hard to figure out when we first moved in because there's just space on either side and it felt kind of clunky, and it seemed like the best spot for the bookshelves. And obviously you can tell we have quite a few books. They're mainly my wife's. I might own 5 or 6 of these, but I think this is a really nice statement piece of the house. And our house was built in the 70s, and so I didn't want to do a painted bookshelf, but I didn't want to have the really tacky stained oak that used to be in the day. So did a couple samples, and as you guys remember, this is the final piece.